Blessings. So in this video, I just want to talk about something which is, I would say, prevalent in the world in terms of rhetoric. Now, the Bible says that the devil is subtle. He's the cleverest of the beasts of the field. Now, he's still a beast, meaning that he is serving lesser spirits. His behaviour is beastly, reptilious and base. And so it is pathetic and petty. But there is a degree of intelligence attached to that spirit. So that's where the cleverness comes from. So Jesus said, the sons of God, the inhabitants of heaven, will look back and say, really? Was it that one who deceived the whole world? Meaning that the societies of the future heaven and earth will be so far advanced intellectually that they will deem Satan as one so slight that it's a wonder how he was able to deceive an entire world. But what you've got to factor is that the world is populated by babies first. And once you get that into your thinking, babies are influenced by the world around them. Given that Satan survives men, we all die, the devil doesn't. All he has to do is conquer generations coming up to their demise. That's not difficult. As men get older, sure, their faculties start to dwindle. So what they do is they come between generations to try to worsen the decline and the decay morally, infrastructurally within society throughout those generations. So when you factor that in, Satan can sort of incrementally decrease the level of morality over the generations and doesn't have to increase in intellect, but rather starve the intellect, knowledge, wisdom, and understanding of humanity, which is basically taking candy from babies. He's a scumbag baby abuser. And when you take that into account, when you really understand what he is and the relative advantage he has, tactically, he doesn't have to be anything immense to deceive the world. And I assure you, he's nothing immense. He's pathetic. He's a beast. So, he's been around for thousands of years. He has the same tactics. He has evil cleverness. He has intellect beyond that of a man, power beyond that of a man. So why would it be difficult for him to conquer babies, which is ultimately the future of humanity, are the babies? So if you can get into the babies' heads, you can direct the course of humanity. And so that's why he wants to send Mommy to work. He wants to send Mommy to work because Mommy protects baby. Fundamentally, naturally, she is hardwired to protect the child. So Satan knows if he can keep Mommy away from the child, it's far more easy for him to psychologically conquer both. It's divide and conquer strategy through compartmentalization. He tricks people. He brain soils people into believing they need to conform to his strategy to be accepted within the societal groupings, which is the fundamental desire of humans, because we're social creatures. So all he's really doing is exploiting as a low-down thief, and that's what he is, a thief and a murderer. He's a scumbag. He is basically exploiting the human tendencies which avail him an advantage. he's scum. And once you realise that, he's not even worth really considering for being anything impressive. He's not. Because it doesn't take a very impressive person to conquer babies. And so what the devil does is the devil uses people, their perversions, and feeds their perversions so that they're easier to manipulate and to conquer, so that he can place them in the positions he wants them, so that he can divide the family. And that's why I go out on a daily basis and I say, guys, do you understand why it is that you kept Mammy in the Constitution when you voted at this most recent referendum? And people are not stupid. They know that they need to preserve the mother in the Constitution to protect the baby in the future. But it takes understanding. Jesus said, my people perish for a lack of knowledge. So knowing that, if people perish for a lack of knowledge, doesn't it make sense that eventually Satan would be using the governmental systems or his guys in government to encourage ignorance? If that's how people perish and Satan's a murderer. So he wants to basically inculcate, indoctrinate ignorance. Basically by the prevention of the passage of knowledge, which is another form of division. You see, what happens to a dead body? A dead body divides. It decays, it corrupts, and it divides. It's the breakdown of the cell. Well, what is the cell of the body of the nation when you consider metaphorically that the nation is a body of people? Well, what's the fundamental cellular structure of that body? It's the home, it's the family. So if Satan can break down the family, he can divide the body. So he can kill a society and the future of their children. He can isolate them, corner them, by dividing them from Mammy in a way that Mammy's more inclined to accept. So he doesn't just come and rugby tackle Mammy and take the baby in the pram. What he does is he says, Mammy, best thing for you is to go back to work. Girls run the world. You do want to be accepted by Beyonce and her ilk, don't you? Because she's cool on MTV. Girls run the world. Girls run the world. But what's implied is that equates to girls wear a business suit and get a job in the office to run the world. And that's not the case. That's what the movies are telling you. See? So it's a complex of media which is teaching you what Satan wants you to believe. So that when you come of age, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, the world has told you, girls, if you want to be accepted by each other, you have to behave in this manner. So everybody has the preconceived idea that everybody else in the group has a specific expectation of them. So it's an imaginary peer pressure. And then all it takes is a demon to enter into one of the girls in the group and pretend that that's a real expectation of everybody in the group if they want to be in the cool gang or any gang. So the cost of being socially accepted is conforming to Satan's narrative. So he sets up these structures or barriers to acceptance in your own perception, so he can get you to conform to behavioural patterns which are destructive, divisive, and ultimately corner the child. Well, if daddy's at work and mammy's at work, where's the baby? At the creche. But Satan doesn't want mammy and daddy being at work to give the household financial stability. So mammy might only be, at the end of paying for the creche, €30 better off. But Satan will have measured it so closely that that €30 is the difference between mammy and daddy having enough to pay the bills and not. And if you think that they're not calibrating it and orchestrating it that closely, then you're not awake. Yes, they go to college and they know what they're doing, but they learn these skills not so they can implement the proper infrastructures, but so that they can closely calibrate the systems which will orchestrate the collapse of those structures. Satan uses their skills not for good, but for evil. So what do we have? We have governments full of Freemasons from down the Freemasonic Lodge, where they're shaking hands with the devil and demons, and they're teaching them how to behave in such ways where they have a relative advantage over the people, where they exploit the people to harmful effect and profit on the harm. So they make people sick and then sell them drugs which make them sicker but hide the symptom. And then they keep them perpetually coming back to the pharmacy to buy drugs which are keeping them sick, to buy more drugs. It's like people buying the antacids, whether it's give me one of the brands, Rennie's or one of these, antacids. When the solution to acid reflux is increasing the acid in the stomach so that the esophageal sphincter closes, so the acid stops coming out of the stomach and up into the throat, giving you acid reflux. It's not a lack of acid that will solve acid reflux. It's an increase of acid in the stomach that will solve acid reflux, because the increase of acid stimulates the sensory epithelial cells in the wall of the stomach, which cause the esophageal sphincter to close, preventing the acid from rising up into the esophagus. But they lead you to believe that the antacid will solve the problem. It only treats the symptom, which is what? Acid in your esophagus. So it neutralizes that, yeah, so the pain stops. But that's only prolonging the problem. Is it coincidental that I'm talking about this now and my video's starting to skip on Facebook? You'd wonder, wouldn't you? So, the point I'm making to you is that Satan designs so-called crisis as an excuse, as a scapegoat tactic, as a distraction and a decoy, as a way that men can appear to act blamelessly or with impunity, to use another word, so that they can look like they're not making a hames of it on purpose, which they are. Because if Mommy and Daddy are going to work, and when Mommy becomes pregnant, she still has to put her hands out to the government, something's seriously wrong. Because you're worse than a slave. Now you have two adults working full time, and even when their wages are put together, they don't have gainful employment. That's sick. That is twisted, guys. The man alone is supposed to have enough money so that he can pay for the woman when she's pregnant. That's how far away that this current wage is from an acceptable rate of pay. And it has been orchestrated, and they blame it on inflation and crisis and energy crisis and cost of living crisis. The government are the crisis. They're the ones implementing these problems, blaming things overseas that the citizens can't hold them accountable for, when they're paying farmers not to farm. How's that cost effective? Is it cost effective to buy potatoes from Spain and not buy them from farmers in Ireland? Is that how you avoid a potato blight, by not growing any? I mean, it's just stupid. And unless you have farms and houses in abundance, you can't have any expectation of true value systems within your economy. Or self-sufficiency. or prosperity or the common good, because these mechanisms and these methods of trade are constantly undermining the minimum wage. Because if you can get cheap labour and use machines, why would you apply a proper wage to the individual worker when everything's been leased? Well, I ask you, how can the government sustain households and pregnant women when the only money they get is from the pregnant women and men? It's the workers giving them taxpayers' money. How can they give the people back more than they're giving them? And if they're not, then why does the woman give them the money so that the government can give it back to them when they're pregnant? Why would you hand it to them to take it back? That's all psychological. We own you. We feed your baby. We put nappies on your baby. No, they don't. The government don't have any money but the money you give them. But it's psychological, because if you're going sticking your hand out to the government, now the focus is on them for provision and not you. So system is designed to send mammy to work and baby to creche, to separate that fundamental and vital relationship, to avoid Satan coming in with his wolves into your house. Do you understand? He's a bastard. A murderous bastard. So, ladies, you were kept in the Constitution by a pervasive vote in Ireland. The majority of people kept you in the Constitution, and well done, guys. But you have to ask yourself, why were we voted to remain in the Constitution? Why did people keep us in the Constitution? And I'll tell you, fundamentally people value mammy. Fundamentally people value the woman. It's not right to remove her from the Constitution because she's a pillar of society. And in many ways it's right what Beyonce said. Girls do run the world, but from the house. And if you lose sight of that mammy is homemaker, maker of your favourite meal, the person you go to for a hug for no reason in particular, when she's watching something on TV or whatever, the person that's there for you when you don't really have anything to say but you want to say it to mammy. So mammy is fundamental. She's a pillar. And actually wisdom is referred to in the feminine. When God created the universe, wisdom was there. She was there. Well, how can the baby have any expectation of an impartation of wisdom to preserve them in the world if mammy's at work? How can that relationship, that fundamental relationship of the house, of the cell, of therefore the society and therefore the common good, be preserved if mammy doesn't know why she has rights? And under the family it says this, in the Constitution of Ireland, praise God, it says, the government must, if the weather is good, maybe, no, the government must, if Johnny's not sick that day, no, the government must, if the trade routes are open, no, the government must, if there's not an energy crisis, no, the government must, period, endeavour to ensure that it never be as a result of economic necessity that a woman leaves the house and goes to work. That is fundamentally their most important task. And ladies, that's why you're in the Constitution. That is the most important reason you're in the Constitution. Because our ancestors knew that your relationship with the child is the most important relationship in the house. They knew that. It just is. It is the most important relationship. And that's why women are regularly favoured in the courts over the men. Because society generally accepts that the mother-baby relationship is the most important and tantamount, fundamental to well-functioning members of society. Do you understand? Because that's why you're in the Constitution. That's why. So well done, Ireland, in keeping Mammy in the Constitution. But now it's time to hold your government accountable to what that means. And what that means is gainful employment for the man. Did you know that? That is the logical corollary of what I've previously stated in the family unit. Under the family in the Constitution says, the government must endeavour to ensure that it never be as a result of a lack of money, economic necessity, a lack of money that Mammy goes to work. Well, if Mammy's not working, she's not bringing in the money, so who is? Daddy. So Mammy's in the Constitution so Daddy gets paid enough. But why is it important that Daddy gets paid enough? So that baby has a Mammy. The reason it's vital that Dad gets gainful employment is because it's vital that Mum is at home with the child. She has to get wages. Men used to come home and give the money to the wife. And she would allocate it where it needed to go. She managed the house. He went to work, he was the breadwinner, and she managed the home. She ran the world from the home. Don't believe anything else. She doesn't need to put on a business suit and shake her behind. She was running the home from the house. And many still are. But we have to hold our government accountable that they make sure, endeavour to ensure, because they're at nothing. They're udders on a bull if they're not doing that. Mary up on the newsagents on the corner can balance the books every night when she has to read the till at the end of her shift. If the business didn't make that happen, they couldn't do their taxes at the end of the year. Then the government would be looking for their taxes. But the government don't have to balance their books and haven't done so in over 100 years, but that's okay. The government must endeavour to ensure that it never be as a result of economic necessity that a woman has to leave the house and go to work. Now, ladies, that's why you're in the Constitution. And that means gainful employment for the man. Wakey, wakey, ladies. Because the future generations need you to make a stand. The babies need you now to make a stand. And young men specifically, hold your government accountable to your Constitution. That's where it is. Ladies, you need to understand why it is that you're in the Constitution. And young men need to understand why it is that you're in the Constitution and what that means for them in terms of how much they should be getting paid. And gainful employment is having enough to put a roof over your head, food in the bellies, the whole lot, what you need, and a little bit left over, hence the name gainful. Now, people might say, well, there's nothing in the Constitution that says... Lots of things in the Constitution are implied. It wouldn't be reasonable to think that it's the government's sole job to make sure that women have enough money to stay at home and mind the child. Yes, in the absence of a breadwinner, the government step in. But when there's a breadwinner, the breadwinner's wages alone should sustain the household. And our granddad's wages did. Why can't ours? They keep telling us that we're developing as a society. How is this seen? You're failing fundamentally in the economy and the deliverance of the infrastructures. You're not even building enough houses. You're paying farmers not to farm, and you want to tell us that your R&D is of benefit? You're not even getting the basics right. If a 3-year-old gets a copy of Minecraft tomorrow for the PlayStation, what's the first thing they build? Houses and farms. Come on. You're paying farmers not to farm. Getting the spuds in from Spain. How is that economically sound? That's mindless. That's deliberate and orchestrated collapse for the purposes of control and manipulation, so that you can send daddy and mammy to work and corner the baby in the creche to fill them with your immoral debauchery in the syllabus. And when you impoverish the creche, then they come to the government looking for handouts and grants, and you say, oh yeah, that's grand, we'll give you the grants, but it's just a matter of we'll decide what the syllabus is. And they're orchestrating it, they're manipulating it, it's highly evil, and it is sedition and treason. And this government needs to be removed. And a proper government who are going to uphold the Constitution of Ireland and do their job properly and submit to what it is they have to do for the money we pay them. It won't happen unless you do that. Ladies, hold your government accountable. Young men, hold your government accountable. Young men, step up, look at what the society needs and learn how to do that. There's no point in having these highfalutin ideas. I want to be a doctor when I grow up. I want to be a rocket scientist. I want to be this and I want to be that. Sometimes we have to shelve our wants to get the needs in place first. And we need farms and houses. It's you. You're the ones with the guns. You need to be out there doing it. And, you know, paying farmers not to farm means they're no longer farmers. So guys, we need farms and houses in Ireland. Nobody minds opening the doors to refugees, but you have to have doors to open. So get building the houses, and the government has to stop making excuses for not building a few houses. You're saying there's a dole queue the length of the town there. The unemployment is on the rise and nobody's building houses. Why is there not a concerted effort to teach those men how to build houses? Why is that not a drive on? I mean, have people completely lost the plot? The building of houses, how many people would be employed doing that? The building of farms, lads could have livelihoods again. They could have homesteads and little farms. It doesn't have to be a big farm. It can be a little farm. And that farmer could have 20 customers. And he could sell direct to consumer. All of this centralisation of production and power, these supermarkets. Why is there not an Irish supermarket? Quinnsworth, Super Quinn, Dunnes Stores. Is Dunnes Stores even owned by an Irish family anymore? Why are there not Irish supermarkets? You hear farmers on and they're whinging. They're producing beautiful food, vegetables, no chemical use. Beautiful food. And they're saying, Aldi won't buy my potato. Who cares? Go and sell it out of a van. Get a tent. Why is it farmers only get together to complain? We go down the co-op there to complain. We co-op to complain. How's about co-oping to help each other? Guys, it's time to tell your government what to do. They have to get the basics right. And if you listen to anything I've said, listen to that, will you? About government and about proper infrastructure. Farms and houses. How hard is that? Nobody's saying it's easy. But how hard is it to start the drive? You know what I mean? How hard is it to understand that that's what needs to be done? Young, strong men bench pressing twice their body weight and then sitting at home on the couch because they can't get a job. And this isn't beat up the young men time. This is just saying, don't accept it from them, young men. This is your world. It's yours. I'm talking to you. I'm 40. I'm, relatively speaking, a failure at my career. I tried music. I can't get a job as a chef anymore. It might come with the territory as a preacher. This is not about me. This is about you. Build your future for your families. Build your future for your homes. Build your future for the production of food. Build those things and you have independence from your government, which means you tell it what to do. And you don't accept its excuses. Because if it tells you there's something in the way of you doing it, then do it yourself. Preserve your family, preserve your house, preserve your constitution, protect your children. There's absolutely no reason why a mother should be forced to send her child to a creche and only be €30 better off at the end of the week. That's disgusting. And that's orchestrated by a satanic government. It's diabolical. Men, step up to the mark, young men. Women, we kept you in the Constitution. What was that? Just for Women's Day? Sentimental? And I'm not being patronising. I'm asking you, why did we keep you in the Constitution if you're not going to hold this government accountable to upholding your rights, which